So this is going to be a slightly different video for me. It's the first time I've done this, and I'm gonna. This is a kind of a story with a bit of colouring for you as a kind of a deep meditative aid, and a deep relaxation, and also for some of you, if it's getting late at night, it might help you possibly to get to sleep. So the first thing you need to do is you need to write that web address into your web bar, to another page, and go onto that page, and you should find that you get a picture coming up. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you a story about that picture, and as I tell you the story about that picture, you're going to colour it in for me. Okay? So make sure you've got that up, and you follow with me as I tell the story. Okay, so let's get started. So a while ago, on a dark night, I was driving to my in-laws' house. My wife and son were already there, and I was driving a little bit later because I just finished work and I was feeling full of angst and frustration because not everything had gone my way. And as I was driving, as always happens in this kind of case, more things happen. So my car started to splutter and started to feel like it wasn't quite working as it should. So I pulled over, and as I got out of my car and stood at the side of the road to phone for some assistance, I heard a bit of a rustling coming from the bushes next to me. So I decided to have a look at what it was, and when I looked through, this is the scene that greeted me. Now, the first thing that caught me about this scene was I could see a wooden barrel turned upside down on the floor. Now, the wooden barrel was that kind of dark, rich brown colour that you can imagine as those are kind of oak-aged casks that are used for aging brandy and whiskey. And you could smell that kind of old wood scent that you can only get from these old barrels. Could you colour the barrel in, the wooden barrel slats in that nice deep dark brown colour? The next thing that struck me about the barrel was the band that holds the barrel together. I was expecting it to be like a really bright silvery metally colour, or maybe a tarnished metal, but it wasn't. It was actually glittery and sparkly and kind of a pinky colour. Okay, which struck me as a bit odd and bizarre, but at the same time, kind of the kind of colour which you look at it and go, that's a bit strange, it's a bit out of place, but still makes you smile. So could you colour the band that goes around the barrel in nice bright pink colour? Now, as I looked further up the table, I noticed that this impromptu table of a barrel was actually covered in a tablecloth. And as I looked at it, it almost put me back into being in an Italian restaurant with my family and friends. It was kind of that strange plasticky feeling tablecloth, and it was the most bizarre colours. It was kind of a lime green and rich, kind of lightish blue checkerboard pattern, and in between each of those squares was kind of like a gold crisscross colour. Could you colour in that tablecloth for me? That kind of limey green and dark blue squares with the gold hash marks going between. Okay, now the next thing that brought my attention was what was lighting the scene, and I could see that the scene was being lit by the flicker of a candle. As I looked at the candle, I could see those rich gold and red colours that you only get from a really nice candle flame. The candle itself was kind of like that normal kind of whitey, waxy colour, and it was dripping down what looked like an old wine bottle, reminding me of the wine bottles that you have put on your table on a nice warm Spanish evening, just sipping red wine with friends and family. Could you colour in that wine bottle and the candle for me? So the rich yellow and red flames, the deep dark green of the bottle, the kind of light brown colour of that wooden bottom to that carafe. As I looked around, I was mesmerised by the smell of the heavenly scent of that food that was on the table. And as I looked closer, I realised that it was what looked like the tastiest spaghetti bolognese I've ever seen. That the meatballs were a deep, dark, rich pink colour, smothered in a really rich, velvety looking tomato sauce. Could you colour those meatballs in for me, that really rich, deep pink colour? Now the other thing that struck me as odd was the spaghetti. Now I was expecting spaghetti to be kind of a normal spaghetti colour, that kind of faint yellowy, kind of whitey colour, but it wasn't. It was all multicoloured. It was almost like the diners were eating a rainbow, and that just kind of that thought just filled me with such happiness and joy that someone could be lucky enough to sit down and almost kind of eat such fun coloured food. Could you colour in all those strands of spaghetti, as many of those different colours as you can? Okay, now the bowl that spaghetti was in, that mighty meal was in, was shimmering in the light, and it was kind of like a really bright silvery colour, and it reflected the light around it. It looked like a really expensive plate for such an odd setting, and it just struck me as being a bit odd that it was here, but nevertheless it seemed at the same time to fit in. Could you colour that plate and bowl in a silver colour? The next smell that hit me was the smell of freshly baked bread. So I saw the breadsticks in the bowl, and it was the kind of smell that makes you picture in your mind just breaking open a nice warm loaf and spreading a little bit of butter on there and watching it melt into the bread to make it, and then kind of tasting it and it kind of all merging together in your mouth. Could you colour in those breadsticks for me, please? Now the bowl the breadsticks was in brought a big smile to my face, because it reminded me of one of those bowls, those honey pots that Winnie the Pooh used to have, and that silly old bear used to get his head stuck in them trying to get those last little drops of honey from the bottom. And that meant that the breadsticks then reminded me of happy days playing poo sticks off bridges, throwing our sticks into the water and hearing the trickle of the stream as it pulled our sticks through, and we'd run to the other side of the bridge to see whose stick had won. Can you colour that pot in a colour that makes you feel happy and maybe brings back a childhood memory for you? Okay. Now, as I looked up again, I saw that the actual diners weren't what I was expecting. I was expecting to see a couple of people sat there, but they weren't people. They were actually these two dogs, which kind of shocked me, and at the same time made me feel, a little bit surprised, but a little bit happy at the same time. Now, I can really remember vividly what the small female dog looked like, because she looked like the kind of dog that would just give you endless cuddles all day. So her ears were like big, soft, fluffy chocolate brown pillows, and you just wanted to kind of snuggle up into. The rest of her fur was kind of like a slightly lighter shade of brown, with a white stripe coming down her nose, down her face, with a big black shiny nose in the middle, and a big white stripe just on her chest. Could you colour her in? Another sound that came to me was like a little clinking sound. I was wondering what was this little clinking sound as I looked around, and then I realised that the female dog was wearing a little collar, and on the end of the collar was a little pendant that kept tapping against the bowl as she was leaning in to get food. Now the pendant had a bright blue sapphire in it that was reflecting that light from the candle, that flickering light from the candle, and making it sparkle everywhere. And around it was like a gold trim with a bright pink collar. Could you colour that in for me? Now, the other thing that struck me about her was the fact that her eyes were the same shade of blue as her necklace, as that big blue sapphire, and they again sparkled and reflected that light, especially when she looked at her dining partner with such fondness and friendship. Could you colour her eyes in? Now, the scruffy male dog was a completely different kettle of fish. I couldn't actually put my finger on what colour he was. It seemed to keep changing. It started off like a kind of almost like a black and white, then it moved into kind of blues and greens, and then it ended up in pinks and bright kind of pinks and dark pinks, and before going on to silvers and golds. It just seemed to change, and at all times whenever I looked at him, it just brought a smile to my face. Can you colour in the male dog in colours that bring a smile to your face? I decided at this point that, I was probably intruding a little bit too much, so I decided that I would go back to my car and leave these two friends to enjoy their night together. As I was leaving, I decided to take one last look back over my shoulder at this scene, and I realised, as I looked, in the dark sky behind them, a little love heart seems to be floating above their heads and almost exploding like fireworks in celebration of these two friends sat down sharing this moment together. Could you colour in the background and those hearts to show those fireworks exploding in celebration? So I decided to go back to my car, and I realised that all that angst and frustration from before had melted away and was replaced by this just complete feeling of serenity and peacefulness within myself. And as I sat down in my car, I put my keys in ignition, turned the car on, and it started perfectly without any issues. And as I was driving off, I realised that the car no longer was spluttering anymore, and I didn't need any assistance or help. And it was almost as if the car had purposefully kind of brought us to a stop at that point so that I could see that scene and almost lift my own spirits. I hope you found that calming and relaxing and useful, and I hope to see you again for more of these in the future. Bye everyone.